Oh, okay. So, welcome to another episode of Hunting the Haunted podcast with Joe, Sid, and myself, David. And we had some technical difficulties last week, so we did
Some
not. Oh yeah, okay,
some technical difficulties.
major technical difficulties because we had a big windstorm.
A
Oh, it's
duration,
not even. It was
nonetheless.
a. It wasn't even a windstorm. It was an actual storm. A
Oh,
bunch of trees fell down in our area, and flooding and whatnot. My God, it
power
messed
was
up
out for a
all.
couple days.
Yeah, it went. It basically blew out our internet, and we could not hear anybody. It was bad. I was even at work when it started.
I
So
was all the
I'm.
way in Sandusky. I was so mad.
So yeah, it was a lot of tree branches. We live right around the corner from the disabled school here, and they have like a white tent for an event they're going to do. I drove by it after work, completely demolished, destroyed. I'm like, oh my gosh! And there were like big tree branches on the road. Trees fell down, broke in half, split in half. It was a disaster here in Fremont. So that was our chaos from last week, and that's why we could not get on. Joe has a new ghost toy. Can you explain what it is, Joe?
An Ecto 1 spirit box.
Is that the Ghostbusters car?
Yes.
Yes. Austin Maynard built this for me. And it's got a reverb. And you can actually use it as a spirit box and a portal.
Oh, cool.
So that almost sounds like the oh son of a I can't think of what the name of it's called. Ink box. That's what I'm thinking of. The ink box.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it basically is one. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
that's what
That's
it
a very
is.
small one.
Yeah.
See, that's what I need like a little pocket one. I can just take around with me.
This sucker is it's bigger than my head. I mean, this sucker looks like a kid's toy. It's got the knobs on the top where you can
Which will
adjust
be
it.
nice
And
for like a lot of hauntings when they do have, if they are child spirits, a lot of time they're nervous, they're anxious, and they're a little bit scared of the materials that we have. So to have something a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more toy like, a lot of times does the ghost good.
So
yep.
where did you get that
And
at, Joe?
Austin Maynard built this. Uh, put the batteries in the back here,
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
and it's kind of one of those things you got to be like really careful with it. So, as you can see,
Why?
this is his second build of this model. So, yeah, I can't wait to put this thing to use. I haven't even put a battery in it yet, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Uh, what about your last weekend investigation? How did that go?
Last weekend investigation, we went to the Urey House Museum in Blanchester, Ohio. And we set up in the garage and we strung cameras through the yard. We had a lot of off the bug spray because, hmm, thank God. And we set up cameras in the house. And at first, when we started setting them up, I had issues with two of my cameras like blinking on and off. It was like going from night to day, night to day, night to day, and wouldn't stay stable. Couldn't figure out why. Come to find out, the investigator Brent Stevens that was with us that night, he turned on his laser grid. He had a laser grid on, and whatever was in that house ate his battery. He put a brand new battery, and it is gone within matter of minutes.
That sounds like what happened at
And
the Gill House.
Yeah, that's
yeah,
typical.
so we were investigating, and Brent and Bill actually seen a shadow near the stairs of this place. Uh, his grandmother lives there. She's 81. I got to meet her. Very nice lady. She doesn't believe in any of it. And when you're 81, you're not changing anybody's mind. I
Right.
don't even try to change it. I'm not trying to do anything like that. But so she went upstairs, and we were downstairs doing our thing, investigating. And Brent caught some really cool stuff on the SLS camera. And in the kitchen, I walked around, tried to interact with it, touch it or whatever. It just like it didn't want anything to do with me, whatever was in that kitchen. Because that whole night there was always something in that kitchen. And so he had a challenge for us that night where we had to find a item. It was a key and a quarter that was in this house that he wanted us to find. The only way we could get clues is through our ovulus we had. So actually, it was Brent's ovulus. I don't know. It was one of our. I can't remember which one it was, but I had it sitting on a dining room table, and it started spitting out words, and it was giving me clues of where this thing was. It would say aqua, temperature, oxygen, and different other stuff. It was random, just junk, whatever. And then fire. Then it would say a bunch of other stuff. And it would say place. And it said square. And I said, can you give me one more clue? That's when it said square. Buy later. That's what it said over to Ovilus. I was like, what? So we're walking around his living room looking for this thing, like a bunch of morons. Bill walks over to the fireplace. Oh, wait, I can't say where it's at. I can't. Nah. Anyways, Bill finds it where we got the clues from.
Right.
So very intelligent, whatever is in there.
So, and then I got a couple of EVPs, and we got some really good stuff. So.
And where was this at?
That's a Gambler Yuri house.
Oh, okay,
Museum.
gotcha.
Yep.
What about you, Sid? What's new with you?
Well, what isn't new? We've got the flea market this weekend, so I've got some stuff coming up with that. There's a good possibility I'll be able to make it to not only the Sandusky County Fair, but there's a Seneca County one. They actually contacted me, which is pretty cool. I've got some stuff coming up in September. That's about it. I'm going to be doing like maybe a little bit of something when I'm at work. So I'm working at Halloween weekends again this year. And I might just take my spirit box with me and like put my headphones in and just see, because I've always heard that it's super haunted up there, but I've never been able to get anything or let alone take any of my stuff with me. So other than that, that's kind of what I'm thinking, but we'll see what ends up happening.
So last Tuesday, we had a little investigation at Tindell Bridge in Ballville. What was your thoughts about the investigation?
So, like, the actual investigation, I didn't really... Okay, so let me just start from the beginning, because when we got there, number one, I got there first. I was super excited because I got there super early. So I'm, like, hiking through this muddy water and poking around through some things. And it was kind of cool because you hear a lot of ghost stories. You hear a lot about, like, seeing cars or hearing people crying or a woman walking the bridge looking for her baby. So when I kind of got there, I was looking around, what could be reflecting to cause these kinds of things? Is there any other reflective surfaces down there besides the water? Is the flashlight going to project this? Is it going to project that? Whatever it might be. And we kind of sat down and got comfortable on the bank, and we had to have a ring of fire of bug repellent because holy moly, dude, were there mosquitoes everywhere. But it was actually kind of peaceful. We didn't really have anything too crazy. We had a couple of things maybe pop through the spirit box that could have been communication. Um, I did. We did catch a couple of things that we saw with our own eyes, but without our equipment actually looking in that exact area, which is always seems to be an ongoing issue because our own eyes are so much better than cameras anyway. But I did see like a red light at some point down below, um, across the river off of the bank, and supposedly there was a woman that actually went over that embankment in her car. It was a 20-foot drop, and she passed away from the shock of it. And I was maybe iterated like maybe that red light was the brake light falling down. I mean, it didn't look like any of the other lightning bugs. There was no way a car could get down there anyway. Who has a red flashlight? So that was kind of noteworthy. I saw a head peek around one of the bushes, but again, it was dark. I didn't have my equipment set up in that area. So, I mean, we had a couple cool audio things. We had a couple of, we had the REM pod blow up, which was pretty neat. But as far as like solidified evidence, I mean, it's a cute bridge with a very beautiful view. But I mean, there really wasn't anything that I was picking up that me or the machines were picking up that much.
Yeah, that's the thing about going to these urban legend places, these local stories, to see if they're true or not. You're wasting time or they're actually true. But by the time it got towards the end of our investigation, it got really, really eerie. What I thought, but it just seemed kind of off when we were packing stuff up. But Tara said that she did not want to be there. She wanted to punch somebody in the face. And then when we got back to the car, everything was like completely normal. So I think there's something there. So I'm not 100% sure. I know you two get more evidence than I do or have more experience than I do. So I don't know. We probably have to go back down there sometime and just you and I because Tara does not want to go back down there. So
Yeah, I'd totally go back. I'd like to camp out a little bit longer, maybe get to the other side of the river, maybe take some galoshes so I could walk into the water.
that's
Uh,
pretty deep.
I can't be. I'm 6 foot tall. It can't be that bad. If nothing else, I'll get my little raft that I have. I have an inner tube floaty at the house, and I'll just get a paddle and scoot my way over that way.
Oh my god. So to end this update, we have one confirmed special guest, Jason Meadow, on the 23rd at 8 o'clock Saturday. So that's one of our interviews, and then we have three more pending that want to come in. We just have to find a schedule, the right fit.
Yep.
So we got people wanting to come on the show. So today's episode, we are going to be talking about Salem Witch Trials and witchcraft. First question is, do you guys know how this even started?
Well, I'm going to be biased through the whole thing, but it was a whole lot of miscommunication and things like that. Uh, General fear of things that people don't understand and we're looking to persecute because of that.
You thought they were
Yeah.
all witches.
Yeah. So in January of 19, god dang, I'm so dyslexic right now. 1692, 9-year-old Elizabeth Paris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams been having fits of violent contortions and uncontrollable outbursts of screaming. And the local doctor diagnosed it as bewitchment. So throughout the days, other girls in the community had the same exact issues, and these girls were Anna Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, Elizabeth Hubbard, Mary Wolcott, and Mary Warren. So basically, it turns out to be like seizures, and they think it was somebody putting a curse on them. So in February, arrest warrants were out for Tida, Tid, Tida, Tida,
Not
Tidaba,
Chris.
Tiba. I don't know.
Not
Some
here.
some maid, maid or whatever, homeless beggar. That's what they call her. And two other women, Sarah Good and elderly Sarah Osborne, who the girls accused of bewitching them of these fits. So as the time goes on, Good and Osborne denied their guilt, and Tituba confessed. And her mindset is to confess so she can get off easier than the others. Says to save herself from conviction by acting as informer. She claimed there were other witches along her service of the devil. So the fear spread throughout the community. And let's see, and beyond the rest of Massachusetts. The others were accused of Martha Corey and Rebecca Nurse, and 4-year-old daughter of Sarah Good, which they claimed to be upstanding members of a church and community. So basically, all these seizures that they were completely unaware of and uneducated turned it up to bewitchment.
And that's the interesting thing too, is it wasn't just seizures. This is 19 or geez, there now I go with it. 1692 was a very different time period. You had all these different medical issues that are still happening to this day that are all being attributed to one thing or another. You've got everything from, like you said, seizures, but then you've also got, depression, bipolar issues. You've got, oh, geez, you can't even begin to wrap your head around all of these things that would be construed with this idea of witchcraft. And, way back in the day, of course, too, there were people who see, this is where I'm going to start to get not necessarily fired up, but extremely biased. But these are people who were taking, a lot of these quote unquote witches were acting as doctors or medicine women. They were taking the plants that they already knew of what they were doing and were able to crush it up and make poultices. And they would actually a lot of times target women or people with green eyes and red hair. Those were another big two telltale signs of quote unquote witchcraft. And, even just in between the time frame of February of 1692 and May of the following year, more than 200 people were accused. 30 were found guilty, 19 of whom were executed by hanging. And out of those, there were 5 men and 14 women. There was another one that was actually pressed to death.
Yeah, I was getting to that too.
They burn them too, right? They burnt them because they actually thought they were witches at one point.
Yeah. I've also read that there was some like Lyme disease and other medical issues with them, and they chalked up to bewitching and whatnot. And
I mean, you got leprosy, dysentery. You've got
that's one of them too.
Yeah, you're throwing up nonstop because you got into some dirty water, and all of a sudden, oh no, that witch down the road cursed me. Like, it was such a mass hysteria / Catholic fear-driven phenomena that happened. And when you look at things that happened back then, back in 1692, and compare them to things that are even happening to this day, maybe not again with witchcraft, but with other things. It always seems to be this Christianity / Reformation backgrounds that are driving home these fears and this idea.
And it also goes to the stereotype of a witch, because Sarah Osborne was stereotyped as a witch because she was an elderly and she was argumentative. So she kind of chalked it up as a their typical witch. So that's why she was considered as a witch. Uh, Tindell was actually the first one to be accused because the two girls, Elizabeth and Abigail, she was serving them, and something about a witch cake, like fucking, uh, basically a piss cake that she gave to the dog to cure all sorts of things, which it worked, and then all these other girls were doing the same exact issue, has the same exact issues, you know. So it was kind of weird to talk about or even read about. So
Because back
good
in the
luck.
old days, it was unheard of a woman speaking her mind in those times.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
too.
I mean, hell, that went all the way up to what, the maybe the 50s,
It's I don't
It,
know
early
what you're talking
60s.
about. Maybe I mean we just had all of our rights taken away this year, so I mean
Right,
it's
right, yeah,
ongoing.
right,
Yeah,
right, yeah,
I
right.
mean
um,
if that
yeah,
doesn't
like
show you from 1692 until now, we're still having these kinds of issues of this mass hysteria and these ridiculous hunts that are going to end up turning up innocent people for nothing. But this is the way. This is why we always say, make sure you know your history so it doesn't repeat itself, and it's repeating itself on the daily. So, and then you
so.
have. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. I was going to keep on going.
No,
Just
so
keep on.
I'm
Just
even just with the first hanging, Bridget Bishop. She was the first person executed during the witchcraft trials in Salem. Um,
do you know what day it was?
that would have been. Hold on, give me 1 second. So she
Oh, don't
died.
look it up. Don't
No,
look it up, you cheater.
I have everything written down. This is my kind
Oh,
of.
I
Just because I
was,
have extensive notes means nothing.
I was gonna say,
So
don't look at it, you cheater.
no, she died in June 10th of 1962. She was 60 years old.
June 2nd.
June 10th.
June 10th. I have June 2nd here.
Yeah, no. So this is why.
Thank you, History Channel.
Always. Well, this is Bridget Bishop. This is the first person that was hung during the Salem witch
Yeah,
trials.
yeah, she was. Then 8 days later, she was actually hung. Yeah, 8 days later. So June 10th. Yeah. And which is now known as the Gallows Hill in Salem town. So yeah, you're correct. It's June 10th.
Oh, say that again.
Oh no, you only have one spot. So after that, 5 more people were hanged in July. 5 were in August, and 8 more in September. Additional 7 were accused of witches, and they were dead in the jail. So they basically died without even being executed.
Innocent
So
people were murdered.
yeah, there's a lot of people that were accused. They said 200 people were accused of witchcraft, witchery, and stuff like that, and they only executed 20 out of those 200 people, and mostly were female.
There's a couple different sayings that go around the Salem witch trials. One of the big ones, especially in the witchcraft community nowadays, is it wasn't just witches that they were trying to burn; it was women, and that's been a huge phrase that has circled around this kind of thing. And then, of course, we have George Burr, the local or not local historian, but famous historian, and he said that and I quote, "The Salem witchcraft was the rock on which theocracy was shattered."
Right.
And I mean that's I couldn't have said it any better myself. I mean, it's if you're able to control the masses with this hysteria, with this fear of things. I mean, if you've ever seen the movie The Witch, a very good depiction of everything that's happening. In The Witch, same thing. It's these two kids that are, kind of dancing around. They're talking to things they shouldn't be talking to, and these crazy things start happening around the house, and they're accused of witchcraft, and like the whole movie just blows up. It's crazy, but I mean, that's one of the most wonderful depictions I've seen of that type of mass hysteria and how quickly it can turn on people.
Yeah, you can watch that movie on Netflix. It's still on Netflix. I watched it. It
Indeed.
was okay.
Good soup, man. It's some good stuff.
I mean, it's okay. I think it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but I thought it was going to be more Salem Witch Trial kind of thing. But it's focused on one family, though. That's the thing.
Indeed.
But
And
it does give you a picture of what it was like back then. So, then Giles Corey, Martha's husband, that's who it was pressed to death by stones. So basically, they put like a huge ass boulder until he fucking died.
kept
So
adding more and more.
I think from what I've seen in the past, like they would stack like stones on top of this person until he just basically died. I mean, it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be like a big boulder. It was like you could have a
They have
heavy
like a
rock. You
door.
could have
They've
yeah,
got like a
yeah,
door or something holding on to it,
yes,
and they're just adding more rocks. And I
yes,
think
yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Does anybody know the reason why he got crushed by a stone?
he refused to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. So in order to get that out of him, they subjected him to that pressing. And he died after 3 days of that torture. So being underneath these rocks, under there for 3 days. 3 days of having these
Yeah.
things crushing your bones slowly but
Yep.
surely, pushing the last of the air out of your lungs. Whoops.
Yes, it was that reason. He refused to enter a plea at his arraignment. So he refused to go to court. So that's a great reason to get stoned. So to end this whole entire conclusion,
And he was 81 years old when he died.
yeah, something like that. He was
Man.
very old.
Being pressed to
Man,
death
he-
as an 81-year-old. And he survived
I'm-
for 3 days?
Yes, yes, yes.
Well,
Yeah.
I couldn't even walk up a hill and breathe much better after 5 minutes, let alone
No.
3 days of being pressed.
So
I agree.
this happened from almost a whole year. January was the first incident, and then all the way up to early 1693,
Yep.
Governor Phipps, that's how you say it. Governor Phipps dissolved the court, and in October, well, over a year, and mandated that its successor disregard evidence. Trials continue with dwelling intensity until 1693. And that May, he pardoned all the releases of witch trial charges, so he dropped everything. And then 1697, Massachusetts General Court declared a day of fasting for the tragedy of Salem Witch Trials. Later deemed the trials were unlawful.
Really?
Samuel Sewell,
So
one of the thank you. One of the judges that were doing it publicly apologized for his role in the process. Which after that, Massachusetts colony passed a legislation, if I can't even talk today, restoring the good names of the convicted and giving them financial restitution of their heirs in 1711. And then got something here that gives you a little bit more about the five notable people.
Well, real quick, let me jump back to this Giles Corey real quick. So not only was it unusual for people to refuse to plead, especially when they were being pressed by those rocks, but he did it in complete silence. And since Corey refused to plead, he died in full possession of his entire estate, which would have otherwise been forfeited to the government. Instead, it passed on to his two sons-in-laws in accordance to his will. So because he was able to hang on to that, he was able to not only keep himself, a little bit more sturdy, but he was able to continue to care for his family, even though for 3 days he had boards with rocks put on him and he refused to speak.
That's how
Yes.
you do it, though.
Like honest
you
to
do
God. And honestly, it was because of Corey that gruesome and public nature of his death may have caused residents of Salem to rethink their support for the witch trials. So in 1712, he was actually absolved of his crime, but his wife was not. So because he protected his estate while he pled, the government still attempted to extort the money from his heirs after the witch trials. But in 1710, his daughter Elizabeth and her husband filed a lawsuit seeking damages from that exact person. Her statement to the court read, "After our father's death, the sheriff threatened to seize our father's estate, and for fear of that, we complied with him and paid him £11 and 6 shillings in money." So even then, they were still being coerced all those years later.
Yeah.
Oh, there's apparently a ghost story that surrounds Giles Corey, too. Much like the Mothman, he'll actually be seen walking in his graveyard before disaster strikes the city.
Hmm.
And then even better, the position of the sheriff of Essex County. So the exact same person that gave them issues starting off, they actually suffer from the curse of Giles Corey. As the holders of that office, since that person that tried to seize all that from the estate, they've either died or resigned as a result of heart or blood ailments. Corwin died of a heart attack in 1696, and the curse is said to have been broken when the sheriff's office moved from Salem to Middleton in 1991. And after that, everything was fine.
There you go.
Let's see. That's some good stuff right there. That's
Very interesting.
it. Kind of touches back on that Skinwalker Ranch. Like, if you're gonna make my life hell, I'm gonna put a curse on X, Y, and Z. Have fun staying here.
Yeah, no kidding. So all these 5 people that were in here: Bridget, Sarah Good, Susanna Martin, Martha Carrier, Martha Corey. They were all accused of witchcraft and seeing stuff. One said that several others had named her as a fellow witch in the confession, claiming she flew on a broomstick and attended witches gathering.
That
On
sounds like some old style satanic panic right there.
On July 19th, Good was carted to Gallows Hill, executed along with church-going grandmother Rebecca Nurse and 3 other convicted witches. So most of these are lack of evidence, but they ended up finding stuff to accuse them and executing them by hanging. So yeah.
It just sounds like an old style. Oh, I was going to say witch hunt, but that's literally where the term came from. So I can't, I can't say that. I mean, just to have that kind of hysteria engulfing that many people, and really turning in your neighbors, turning in your friends, turning in your family, and that was a very real thing. And to some degrees, it still is. Maybe not with the same, oh, they practice witchcraft, but I mean, that's a lot. I'm reading over all of my accused but survived and the accusers. And I mean, it's just the amount of people that had their hands in this is insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, there's a documentary, like a 4 or 5 episode show on Discovery Plus that talks about this, which was pretty interesting to watch. And the Tindell character, she was the first one to be charged, to be convicted, to be accused, and she never got her execution. So she was the first one in and never died from it, but everybody else around her did. So if you have Discovery Plus, go watch that. It's actually pretty interesting, to be honest. So
Some very good stuff. I mean, and it's so interesting because even looking at this versus modern witchcraft, it's like I said, I'm definitely biased and it touches a certain chord with me just because to a certain degree, these are my people. I mean, whether it is just based on women or whether it is based on these women who were baking things with different plants or were making medicine out of these things or were, a little bit more loud spoken, a little bit more, obnoxious or anything. That's me to a T. So, I mean, to look at it from my point of view, I mean, it's incredible and awful and such a huge pivotal part of history that it's just beyond baffling to me, really. Especially because, to be exonerated, a lot of these women, were put to death and were executed in the 1600s, but we have them as their criminal status right now. They've been exonerated as of Halloween of 2001. And that's a big number from 1692 to 2001. That is a big number. And to finally be exonerated after all that time of, this horrible, horrible fate. It's just, it's so painful. I don't even know. But like, honestly, to have my criminal charges be listed as witchcraft and conspiracy with the devil, sign me up. Put it on my permanent record. Go ahead. Guaranteed.
Yeah, that's what uneducated people with medical stuff will get you, and or jealousy of other people and stuff like that. And that was one of the reasons too, is others being jealous of others, and they accuse them of witchcraft and whatnot. And
well, even just super recently with that modern day witch hunt, we had the actually it was in Salem. It was the Satanic Temple headquarters in Salem. They actually had a man who had God spray painted on his shirt, tried to commit arson with people inside of the building on a Friday night recently. And I mean, it's modern. It's still happening. People are uneducated. They don't know what's going on. They don't understand the other things that are out there. And they're making these ridiculous, rash, and essentially criminal decisions. And the interesting thing is it's still the exact same thing that has fed that fear. It's that Catholicism fear. It's the, God sent us on this mission to do X, Y, and Z. God wouldn't like this conspiracy with the devil, that. I mean, and again, it's all so misinformed because same thing with the Satanic Temple. It has nothing to do with the devil. Nothing to do with it. There is not a single Satanist that has that idol. It's not a big red man on a chair, just as witchcraft isn't looking at your siblings and throwing your hands over them and suddenly they have a seizure or whatever it may be. I mean, people were dying for much less, and it's terrible.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with people just back in the old days. It's like you had a woman speak out or something like that. Like I said, it was unheard of at the time. And same if like I even heard of like people would get skinned. Like they would skin them, and then they'd rip their flesh off them, and they would still be alive, laying there, and they would die of hypothermia because they have no skin to protect them, and that's men and women.
Well, you got to think back then too. People were thinking that bloodletting was a surefire way to get rid of disease, and they would take a box of razors, a little tiny box. They actually have one at Cedar Point in the museum because I freaked someone out by telling them what it was, and it looks like a pencil sharpener, but it's got a bunch of blades on the top, and they would just take it and rake it over their foot to bleed out that disease. And I mean, if you're having that kind of uneducated and you didn't really have much education back then, especially with medical stuff. But if you're making those kinds of decisions and making those kinds of, steps and things, trying to get an idea, or you think something's going to work and it doesn't. And that's why the scientific method was so important when it came around, because people back then did not know what the hell they were doing. No. And it caused mass death, whether it was them executing or people committing suicide or people getting sick and dying. And I mean, you don't know. It's just there are so many people. Even like, here's another note: a jury of women found a third nipple upon a bishop, or upon Bridget Bishop, the first woman that was hung, and then they consider that a sure sign of witchcraft. And then when they actually go to examine her, it's not there. I mean, there was such a gross amount of lying that was applied in the court.
Yeah.
The court, I say court loosely because if you think the court's bad now, like the court back then was, ugh. But I mean, it's just awful. I mean, this is just, it's, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. People just need to, because it's so pertinent even now. It's so important even now that we just need to be educated in the things that we're doing and the things that we're talking about. Don't be spreading misinformation when there's the real, true information out there.
Well, they were about God and country. You know what I mean? That's what they were about. And
I like how you're using still present day terms because that seems to be what's going on still.
well, yeah. I mean, they were about God and country. That's what they were about. It's and the men thought they were smarter, better, and everything more than women were. And I promise you, me being alive right now and me living in my house, my wife is 10 times smarter than I am. I guarantee it.
There's got to be someone pulling the levers behind everything else. But I mean,
yeah,
even just going into the modern stuff too, it's so interesting to see how everything carried over and how everything has been transcribed from, 1 year to another. Hold on, let me do something real quick. 330 years ago, my friend.
Yeah.
That's 330 years ago. And 330 years ago, we're still not learning from these trials. We're still not learning from this literal witch hunt. I mean, it's happened multiple times in history, not just through witchcraft. I mean, look at the World War II, Nazi Germany. They were going after Jews and gays and all that fun stuff. I mean, if it's going to continue on now the way it is, and one thing I always hate to say is I don't want to go political on here. I don't want to do any of it, but it's so pertinent right now with all this, with the Roe v. Wade thing. That is a Catholic-based overturn in the Supreme Court. That is targeting women specifically. So to have this sudden modern-day witch hunt that has just happened within the last couple of weeks, maybe not even 2 weeks now, I mean, what is going to happen? How much of this history are we going to see repeat itself? How much of this is going to become relevant again, or even more relevant than what it already was? So, I mean, you don't know. And that's why we always try to say, learn from your history, learn to not let it repeat itself, but we let it repeat itself constantly over 330 years. 330.
Very true.
It's just, you've got so many different things that line up. And again, if you go into modern witchcraft, a lot of these things have to do with ongoing things. They look at these touch test things. And that was actually during the preliminary examinations during these witch trials in 1692. And if the accused witch touched the victim while the victim was having a fit and the fit stopped, observers believed that meant the accused was the person who had afflicted the victim, as several of those accused were later recounted. So, I mean, they're looking at these things. Oh, it just makes me so frustrated because it's just so relevant. It's still happening.
Oh boy. Let's not turn this podcast into like a true crime thing. You would definitely be being pissy about whoever's doing the crime and whatnot.
You think so? I love true crime.
I listened to a few true crimes. They're actually pretty cool.
You want to talk about anything? I got you. For some odd reason, mass shootings are my specialty. I can tell you anything and everything about them. Everything from the psychological aspects of it to, at some point, I had people's social security numbers memorized. It was messed up. We ever want to do true crime? I got you. We can do a whole nother podcast with that. But it's just...
Which that's also a problem today too, is mass shootings.
Like I said, I don't want to get too political because I'll get in here and I won't stop talking. So I'm trying to steer it back into this witchcraft stuff because I feel confident in my knowledge in that. It'll be much more well taken in than the other stuff.
Okay, then you said you can go in depth on your witchcraft and your workings and whatnot and what you do.
Okay, so witchcraft that I necessarily practice isn't necessarily the same as others. So witchcraft as a whole, people will usually take paganism and witchcraft all in all in the same. Hi, Aurora. I didn't switch the comments until recently, but hello, yes. But we're sitting there and I lost my train of thought. So witchcraft is different than anything else. So you can kind of choose your own paths with this. Paganism and witchcraft kind of go hand in hand. A lot of times they deal with Yule, with the rule of three. Nature is your god. We always say that, your guys' church might have the tiles and the stained glass, but we have the grass, we have the moon, we have the skies. And it's really a nature-based religion. It's very intention-based, and you work with the moon phases, you work with the wind, you work with the storms, whatever it is that you kind of focus on tends to be the kind of witch you are. I tend to work with the storms and the death the most. So that's why I use my bones, my tarot cards. I have a lot of graveyard dirt. I have a lot of La Muerta candles and things. That's kind of the witchcraft I do, but I'm not pagan. So I will still celebrate like the Yule and the Samhain and all that fun stuff. But as far as witchcraft, paganism, but then that's kind of where I guess if we're going to send it, we're going to send it where the Satanism sits out. And that's a lot different. So a lot of people will sit and say, kind of going back to that satanic panic or that fear of not knowing, none of it is about, a big red man on a throne. It's not about, murder. It's not about anything similar to that. After everything was said and done from the past couple of weeks, especially when that arson attack happened, I kind of put out a little bit of not a PSA, but kind of a breakdown of everything. Because another good thing is that the Satanic Temple actually provides complete bodily autonomy to any woman that joins or any person that joins. You have the right to your own body to be protected. So when this Roe v. Wade thing started to happen, it really started to blow up. There's been over 700,000 people that have joined. And just to kind of like break it down a little bit of the things that it represents versus anything else. It represents indulgence instead of abstinence. It represents a vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. So to actually live life and be here in the moment and go and do a ghost adventures or whatever it may be, you need to have that undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. Represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of true love wasted on people who don't. Represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek, defending yourself. Responsibility to the responsible instead of concerns for others who have no concerns for you. Satanism represents man as just another animal who, because of his divine, spiritual, and intellectual development, has become the most vicious one of all. So, I mean, even the rules, so quote unquote, what the heck is it called? Commandments. Do not give opinions unless you're asked. Do not tell your troubles to others unless you're sure they want to hear them. When in another's home, show them respect or else do not go there. Do not make sexual advances unless you're giving them mating signal. Do not harm little children. Do not kill non-human animals unless you're attacked or for food. And even the sins are stupidity, pretentiousness, self-deceit, herd conformity, lack of perspective, forgetfulness of path orthodoxies, counterproductive pride, and lack of aesthetics. And all of these things are literally just about you and your family. So to take the witchcraft and the Satanism and put it together, it's kind of made its own little path of what I specifically follow. I don't follow the rule of three. I'm not worried about what I put out there coming back to me tenfold because I can handle it. I've been through just about anything you can imagine. I got it. I got it on lock. But witchcraft primarily uses, herbs and stones and natural things from the earth to heal and to guide and to purify and all of that. And it's a peaceful religion, which drives me nuts because again, people are so gung-ho on condemning anything or anyone like this. The last flea market I went to, I had a woman wave her hand over all my stuff and go, "I curse you in the name of Jesus." And I just kind of looked at her and I just started laughing. I'm like, what? I don't even know what to say to that. And I laughed in this poor woman's face. And I'm like, if you wanted to just talk to me, let me talk to you. I can educate you. We can educate each other. I went the Catholic route. I did the walk. I did all of that fun stuff. I mean, this is the only thing that seems to make sense religious wise. I was more down to be an atheist than anything until I found all this stuff. And to just be able to number one, you're taking care of your family. You're taking care of yourself. You take care of your home. And I have so many herbs and so many things upstairs. I can whip medicine up in little, migraine cures. And I've done everything from toothaches to headaches to feet pain. And I just have all of these herbs and things that you can make your own medicine out of. And that's what a lot of witchcraft started off at, is making your own medicine. And, you have witch doctors go hand in hand with medicine men. And all of those words just kind of pulled together. And that's why I think it made such an interesting base for the Salem Witch Trials, because you did have women just out there trying to, get one thing or another, or heal one thing, or get medicine for an upset stomach, or whatever it may have been. And it could have just been construed awfully. And then here we are discussing it 330 years later. And, we haven't moved anywhere. We haven't done anything as far as the rest of anything. It's just, I don't even know. I guess one of the apologies from the Boston South Church was to take the blame and shame of the late commission of, the old people of Salem. And I mean, it's so in depth and it's all so sad.
So we could probably tie voodoo into this too.
Probably, but I wouldn't give a lot more than 8 minutes to voodoo. We're doing another one tomorrow, so.
Yeah, which we got to determine on what we're going to be talking about.
I think we figured it out.
What, voodoo?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can talk about it right now. It's kind of.
I'll do a crash course. Give me a second.
Take a swig.
So, voodoo is another big thing. I've actually worked with a couple of what you would consider voodoo gods or goddesses. And that's one thing I will not mess with too much. It's such an interesting religion. And again, this is going to be more down south. Give me a second.
Louisiana.
Indeed. Louisiana is definitely a big area for it, but it came from, African cultures. It came from Dominican, Haiti. It came from West Africa, especially. In
the United States, it's New Orleans is the heart of voodoo, basically.
I want to go so bad I can't even see straight.
I would like to take a trip down there. That'd be cool. We were talking about having the team together and go to Salem for a group thing, team bonding trip. So
here we go. So voodoo and witchcraft kind of go hand in hand, but they're a little bit different. So, a big one that people will know about is, there's actually three of them that are the top three. But we've got Blanc Dani, the Grand Zombie, and Papa Lebat. So Papa Legba is another way to say that one. And Papa Legba is actually one of them that I've worked with hand in hand. And that was one of the very first summoning circle type things I had done. I was trying to get this is before COVID happened and jobs were really scarce and we couldn't get into any of them. And I did a whole thing. Like, and again, if I'm doing witchcraft, I'm usually pretty confident in what I'm doing. I have my offerings and everything, but for the voodoo deities especially, I pulled out every stop I had. I had his cookies set out. I had some bourbon set out. His favorite incense. I had some sugar cubes and a couple other things out for him. And, you know, in witchcraft, you're able to scry. That's one of my favorite ways to do it. I've done it in houses during investigations. It freaked David out because I just had a candle set up in front of a mirror and I was sitting in the dark room just staring at the mirror. But I was actually able to see a face appear in the smoke, and I had a full-blown conversation. And again, with me being who I am, I'm like, I don't know if this is real or not. I can't tell if you're real or if I'm just imagining this, but if you're here, thank you so much. I had a whole conversation. I did the closing out ceremony, which is I took him to a crossroads while still talking to him. I left his offerings there. I dumped out the liquor and I went home. The next day, Jonah had a phone call and he got a job. Literally within 24 hours, everything happened. So, I mean, he especially is one of my favorites, but it's such a secretive religion too. You got to figure, all the way until 1972, the historian Blake Touchstone noted that Louisiana voodoo was then largely being practiced outside of the public eye. So many people didn't even know that it was around until recently, until the late 20th century. And again, this is more of an Afro-Creole, Haitian voodoo type deal, more Cuban. And it really has no formal creed. It's a lot of spoken tradition. It's a lot of sacred text that's kind of floating around. And just the amount of deities and all of that. There's a lot of things that I will convince or try to tell people not to get into immediately. This is one of them. Voodoo is no joke. Voodoo is no joke. Even me, who's been doing this full time since 2015, I mean, you've got to know what you're doing and you have to be 100% respectful. And I have shown what I hope to be nothing more than respect to these deities, just because it's a real thing. I mean,
well, that's the same with investigating too. When you go on investigations, you got to know what you're doing because you could end up, really hurting yourself. So you go in there and start antagonizing something, and you never know, it could follow you home and make your life hell.
I've been asked that too. It's like, are they going to follow us home? It's like,
I hope
I
so.
don't know. I'm like, I don't know. I can't speak for them. They may or may not.
See,
So,
and we can't talk about voodoo without talking about Marie Laveau.
I've heard of that name before.
She is the mother of voodoo, essentially. That was her shtick. She was a voodoo priestess, an herbalist, and a midwife. She, back in and again, this is back in the day where women's rights weren't necessarily that weren't there. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. They weren't there. It's quoted that she would have traveled the streets like she owned them. She was very strong. She was very hard-headed. It only took her a short time to dominate that culture and society in the New Orleans area before becoming locally accepted as the Queen of Voodoo. During her decades as queen, customers often appealed to her for help with family disputes, health, finances, and more. Laveau performed everything from hold on. She would travel around. She would go to different places, but she was mostly out of her own home. She was the third female leader of voodoo in New Orleans. So there was a couple of other ones, including Santa Dide and Marie Salope. Marie Laveau maintained her authority throughout her leadership although there was an attempt to challenge her in 1850, due to such a strong influence, New Orleans voodoo lost a large number of adherents after her death. So she was actually had a beauty parlor too. So a lot of people who have seen American Horror Story. American Horror Story did their research. They looked into this stuff before they actually shot anything. And again, out of respect for these things, there's actually a character in American Horror Story, especially for that season. She had to contact Papa Legba. That was in her script. She was just supposed to chant a couple of things. But again, she's in New Orleans. They're in these areas. They're in these highly haunted areas. And she would do these chants, and she had, the light fixtures behind her would shake, and it freaked her out. She had multiple experiences after trying to contact Papa Legba, to a point where they actually had to bring someone in and be like, help. We don't know what's going on. I mean, this woman, you got to figure, if you're walking through New Orleans, you go into a beauty shop, which again is a huge thing because we were looked at as vain and all that other fun stuff. She had a snake for a pet. And she would even work as a hairdresser in prominent white households. That's how she also got her inside information, was because she would go to these wealthy patrons, instill the fear in them because of who she was. And, she was also an activist. She would go visit prisoners. She would provide lessons to women of the community and do rituals for those in need. And, I mean, holy moly, dude, this woman, after all that, she died peacefully in her home. She had nothing to worry about on that. But I mean, holy moly, dude, her legacy itself is just, people still go to her cemetery. I actually have it saved on my little cemetery social media site that I have. And you can no longer access it because you have to have a tour guide. But yeah, she's recommended as a voodoo priestess, a voodoo queen. I mean, the New York Times talked about her, the Daily States, a whole bunch of different things, and she's everywhere.
She has a tomb in that cemetery in Louisiana, doesn't she?
Yes, she does.
That's what I thought. That's why it sounded familiar, because she has a tomb, or whatever you want to call it.
A mausoleum. So,
Yep,
and
there it is.
St. Louis Cemetery number 1 is where she's at.
Yeah, and that graveyard is pretty big. So
Oh, they're beautiful down south.
yeah, I've heard. Yeah, that's where I heard it, because she has a mausoleum in the cemetery,
Mm-hmm.
and I have heard before that people are still going to see her and whatnot. So
I
Yeah,
don't know if I
most
would
mo-
think to her.
most of the graves down there are above ground because I forget how many feet it is, but it's below sea level.
yeah,
Well,
it's
So
like
what? Yeah,
it's quite a few
well, the funny
thousands.
thing
yeah,
is too, is that I've got family down in Florida. My cousin lives down there, and we went to St. Augustine a couple times. And again, they all have the cemeteries and things above water, but they also have the cages on top of them too.
yeah.
And I kind of looked at my cousin, and she goes, "Oh, I figured you'd ask," because she knows how creepy I am. But she goes, "When the hurricanes came through, the water actually seeped in and was able to grab the air in the coffins and lift them up out of the ground. So they just had these coffins floating all over
Yeah,
the cemetery." And she's like, "Yeah, after that, we had to do X, Y, and Z." But I got a whole bunch of famous ghost stories with St. Augustine, so that's going to have to be another episode. But that's good stuff.
good stuff.
Good stuff.
Anything else to add on to your witchcraft practice and or Salem Witch Trials?
I don't believe so. I think we hit it all pretty good.
Okay, so that leaves us your promotion on your reading site in your site, your business. Almost said side business. Tarot card readings. If you're in Northwest Ohio, Fremont area, you can contact Sid for a reading. Um, she does a good job at that. We do
Oh,
have
thanks.
Jason Meadows did confirm the
Meadows.
23rd
Yep, he
at
did 8 p.m.
8 p.m. Saturday, the 23rd of this month.
Works for me.
Gotcha.
Joe, your team's update, your next investigation.
I will be at Poasttown Elementary School next Friday and Saturday with Brian J. Cano. for Post-Town Elementary School, Post-Town Elementary Academy. And we're going to have some investigators that pretty much never investigated before. And we're going to do classes out there. And of course, it's in a school. So we're making static sensors. And so me and Bill's going to be out there, and we're going to give a class. Brian Cano is going to give a class, and we're all going to investigate, and we're going to have a good time. It's going to be good seeing Brian again. He's a good guy. I like Brian. So, yeah. Let's see what else I got. In August, I will be, as far as I know, be filming with L.A. Marzulli. He is a producer for On the Trail of Nephilim. So I was already in one of them. One of his documentaries. I will be in another one of his documentaries again, I believe. He said he's coming back out here. He wants me in his documentary again. So I'll be filming with him. And in October, we're coming up your guys' way to Painesville, Ohio.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Right. And they got a Paracon up there, the first. So I will be up there with Bill, and we're going to be setting up our little junk booth or whatever. And I believe there's an investigation that night. So do a little bit of investigating right that night, and we'll see.
Next week we discussed about a possible show with you on the road.
Yeah. Thursday, I can't be on the podcast Thursday because I will be sleeping and hitting the road. Friday, well, I got to work Thursday, but when I get home at 7, 8 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is, I'll be getting some sleep. And then I'll be heading out to Post-Town Elementary School Friday. And if you're planning on having a podcast Friday or Saturday, I hope to go live on the podcast from Post-Town Elementary School.
That'd be cool.
Haunted elementary school. So that's where I'm going to be at, and it'll probably be over my phone. I'm sure it'll be terrible, but yeah, that's what I got going on.
We'll see what happens, I guess, if the internet's good enough for you. But anyway, you can support Corpse on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram,
And Facebook. That's all of them we got.
Facebook. You can do the same exact thing, the same platforms with Newark Paranormal Society. You can catch this podcast on Anchor, Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Samsung Player FM, Google Podcasts. If you want to be a supporter of the show, go to patreon.com/haunting the haunted. And I believe that's it for us.
I believe
we'll see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, 8 p.m.
All right.